by mistake somehow.
All right.
Hi guys.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's a lovely, bright, sunny day for once in the West Midlands, and I'm on my way to London. And I thought let's just have a quick catch up with Mr. Lakhi Singh, the property fixer. How are you, Lucky?
I am very well. How are you all? Hope you're all having a great Sunday morning. Morning to everybody, and happy Halloween. Yeah, I didn't get time to put like a mask on or put up some makeup. I think Bob Singh did an amazing, what do you call it, scary Sardar look. But I just thought I'd just look like my normal self, which is
Did you?
scary enough, I think.
Well, my kids say I look like Uncle Fester, so I don't really have to do nothing myself.
Yeah, that I think that is very scary actually. None. I think the
Oh, thank you.
quicker you can get off the camera, the easier it'll be on the eye of the viewer. By the way,
Oh,
Jane
mate.
Baylor is giving a shout out saying hi, and we've just had another user saying good morning. I don't know who they are because we're on 9 different platforms today. We're on my Facebook page, which has got 5,000 people on there. We're on what's the other one? We're on the Alternative Property Business Solutions community, obviously, and we're on my following on Facebook. So I think I did a quick count with you earlier. I think there's about 7,500 people this is going out to. So hopefully we'll get more than 1 or 2 viewers watching today. Jane
Brilliant.
is
Well,
obviously here. Hi Jane, how you doing?
it is early Sunday, early afternoon on a Sunday, so maybe before lockdown, everyone's visiting their families. Well, I certainly noticed that right now in the petrol station. It's packed. But let's start with what the topic of the day is going to be, Lucky, and it's regarding how is this lockdown going to affect the property market. So what I want from you is to give some sort of 5 headings in terms of what you anticipate is going to happen within these lockdown measures. How are people or investors going to be affected, or even sellers for that matter? So, what are your views?
Okay, first of all, what's happened is everybody has had a bit of battle practice with the lockdown in the first lockdown, which happened in March. So I think people are pretty much aware of what's happening. I think the difference now is that it's a tiny bit easier for a lot of families out there. I think because the universities and the schools are still open. And I think a lot of people, probably won't be impacted in the same way because they're probably used to it from the first phase, which is working from home quite a lot. But for some people, it's very difficult to do their work, especially with somebody like myself, where you really got to be in your offices to be doing a lot of the work, a lot of my equipment, everything's there. So it's going to be quite difficult, I think, to get in and out. So these are some of the practicalities for people, which is, how do you get into work? Because you can't really sometimes contribute to your work the same way working from home. So how do we get around that? So that actually is going to be an issue. But what are the 5 key issues you think? I think that will be the big problems. So number 1 is really deciding whether you need to be seeing people or not. If you have to see people, the question is how do you maintain safe distancing? What measures can you put in yourself? So one of the things that a solution for that is to actually do a risk assessment for your company and to make sure that from a management point of view, you keep your staff safe. And if you want to do that, you really got to do that risk assessment. There's risk assessments you can carry out, which are online in lots of places. So that's number 1. The second thing I think is going to happen is that inevitably with the second lockdown, the chances of the property market being impacted are very high. And there's a TV documentary about um, the gentleman called Martin Armstrong, Martin, Martin Armstrong, which I watched last night, which is called The Forecaster. It's a very interesting watch. It's about a gentleman who basically gets caught up in a scandal to do with the Ponzi scheme. But the reality is that he wasn't really responsible for the Ponzi scheme. He's just been put into prison so that the American government could actually steal his ideas. But he wouldn't give up. But eventually he manages to get out. But he's one of the most accurate forecasters of what's happening in the global markets in the world. And every time he's made a forecast, out of the 20 different forecasts that he's made, he's been pretty much spot on within a couple of days.
Really?
Now that sounds accurate. That's scary. He's actually not even out by a couple of days. He's actually on the day. He's predicted a particular date. Now the question is, how does he do that, and how does it relate to what we're talking about? So Martin Armstrong, he's an American-based sort of fund. Trying to think of the name of the fund, what it was called, but I think actually it's called Princeton. The Princeton Fund, I think. But he became a global sort of economist or a leader in terms of a lot of Japanese companies, Chinese companies would turn to him because they could actually then read what's happening in the markets. So question is going to be, how does that impact us? What do we do? What does it mean? Now, he's already predicted in 2020 a huge interest rate rise. So if he's got the 20 other indicators right in the past, what's the chances he's going to get this wrong? And he predicted this in 2015 or 14.
Wow. So you're saying right now in 2020 we'll be looking at high interest rates as well towards the back end of the year?
Well, I'm not saying this is what he predicted in 2014, 2015. So anybody who'd care to watch Martin Armstrong in the Forecaster documentary, it pretty much comes out in the last about 10 minutes, 11 minutes of the sort of, let's just say, documentary about what happened to him. So if you are a person of influence, have deep knowledge, then you just have to be very careful that you don't get beaten up and thrashed around by the system. But the way he makes his predictions is pretty amazing. He pretty much looks at historical evidence over the last 200-300 years of what's happened in different economies, and he does the mathematical equations and detailed analysis on his computers. And from the formulas, he can work out what's going to happen, whether there's going to be a boom or a bust or a cycle in certain geographies around the world. So I thought that was pretty amazing, and I think that's important for the viewers to know.
Okay, no problem. So you're telling me he's actually got a system in place or computer software that can actually predict all this going on for him?
That's right. He's actually developed it, and the government, US government, confiscated all of it, trying to work out where he gets all this information from, and they wanted the code from him, but he refused to give it to them. So he was, I think, illegally arrested for about 9 years with no case, and the judges, the bank, I think it's called a Republic Bank. They were all trying to get the information from him, and the person that actually headed up that bank was actually killed by somebody as well. So it's a huge sort of EastEnders plot, but worse. But at a different level, at a governmental level, with Russia and America and a few other countries involved. But don't quote me on the actual facts, because I can't repeat all of them exactly as they were. Now, what does that mean to us? What are the 5 key things that will impact us? So number one is that if interest rates are going to go up, the lockdown is actually, my opinion on lockdown is that whether it's a coincidence or not, every time that there was going to be some sort of major upheaval in an economy, for example, I think it was Lebanon, about 3 months before it was going to have a major crisis, he knew about it, and he indicated to them that they're going to have a major problem. And so they actually went to war literally about a couple of days before they were about to go into crisis. So big question is a bit conspiratorial. Is COVID-19 just a distraction from the woes of an economic crisis that's actually about to hit the world? Who knows? I don't really want to be the messenger in terms of trying to even understand that, whether that's even possible. But the question is that if it is the case, then interest rates are already in the marked as something that are going to go up. So what's going to be the fallout from all of that? The lockdown is probably like a nominal fallout. But if the global economies and the UK economy's interest rates are going to go up, which is predicted, then how do you deal with that? And this is why I've set up the Alternative Business Solutions community to raise the profile of that issue. Now, I'm not really a sort of super high profile guy, but I just want to make sure that the millions of people out there, innocent people who are trying to make a living, that they're protected from the likelihood of any global collapse or a UK collapse in the economy or interest rate hikes. So you need to be very careful. So number one is do a review of your business and your properties and your finances. Number two, just make sure that you have an alternative way of looking at things. Don't just expect the government to bail you out. Don't expect your money is going to be safe in the bank. Don't expect that if you're on a variable rate that interest rates are going to stay the same. Put yourself in a fixed rate. Yes, put yourself in a fixed rate. Yes, put yourself in a fixed rate. Repeating that 3 times because want to get the message across. Yeah, so quite a lot for people to think about.
But look, you mentioned the interest rates that they're predicted to go up. What's going to be influencing that interest rate hike? Is it going to be all this extra funding that the government's been giving out to try and bail the average Joe Blogs out there with the businesses, or is it just to do with the national? It's going to happen anyway, regardless.
Well, the thing is that I've got to be careful what I say, but let's just say that if I want to put myself out there, I think it's going to happen regardless. Interest rates are going to go up. It doesn't really matter really about COVID-19 or recession or Brexit. This guy actually predicted in the 2015, 2016 that the European coalition would actually break apart as well. So even this Brexit thing that's going on, he'd already predicted it. Okay. So I think it's really worth watching or listening to the predictions that Martin Armstrong's made. And if somebody is that right with their predictions, even if we took them with a pinch of salt and thought, okay, well, he might be wrong, then it's worth actually looking at your own personal audit as a business or a property person and reviewing all of it and putting in measures to make sure that if something were to happen, that you're not left vulnerable.
Okay, no, that's fine. So, but you're saying you talk about measures, and this has been going on for, let's say, last few weeks we've been discussing this. So the measures are what exactly? I mean, is it just to do with your finances? Is it to do make sure, like I said, with strict policies in place? What exactly are the measures?
So number one measure is don't take anything for granted, because there's no certainty with anything. So even if you took out a mortgage and you thought you're going to be able to get a mortgage, you may not get the mortgage. So don't presume that the banks are going to help you to get your mortgage. Don't presume the solicitors are going to deliver. Don't presume that surveyors and estate agents are going to be moving quickly. So basically, the whole market is in an upheaval. And even though now I think I read this morning that there's a 5.8% increase over a year of the number of sales that have actually gone up, and month on month it's a 0.8% increase in October, which is quite a lot. Yeah. So the question is going to be, how do we as a nation sort of read between the lines about what we can see and what's likely to happen? So I think that it's a simple message. Get yourself in fixed rates to cover yourself. Number two is start looking for an alternative way of making an income if you're in a slightly vulnerable sector, especially if your hotels or restaurants are being closed down now for 4 weeks. It's definitely going to have an impact. Thirdly, I think you've got to make sure that it's a bit like what squirrels do. They've got to keep hold of their nuts and they actually put them all away during winter. You really got to just make sure that you've got to have your contingency place for your family. So if you do have elderly parents and your business is suffering, you haven't got money coming in, you've got to look after them. Then even roti pani, as they say in Punjabi, food and water are going to become quite critical in these times.
Okay. Now, another point is, do you think the government is doing enough to help us in these sort of times? I mean, are they doing enough, do you reckon, in terms of supporting financially? Are they doing enough in terms of helping us with regards to keeping our businesses afloat? I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, we obviously work in the property industry anyway, so we're not, let's say, from the let's say the gyms or let's say from the food industry at all. So our market is completely different. But do you think enough has been done, or is it just?
Well, to be honest with you, it's relative, isn't it? But I would say, if you look at a couple of sectors today, there's a 1.8 billion bailout for transport for London, which is a lot of money. But there's an argument that that's only 1/3 of what they actually need, because they're going to be short by 2/3 then if you're looking at gyms, a friend of mine actually owns a gym that which I normally use, but I think they've put all their life savings into that business. It's a family run gym locally here. But I think that's going to be impacted, because you can't necessarily continue a business on 0 customers or very few customers. So I think the lockdown is going to have a massive impact. So it's really, really scary for a lot of people. So there isn't really an easy solution to that, apart from just to expect the worst, and then it may be better to divest and get out of whatever business you're in now, rather than to continue suffering. Because if there's another lockdown for another 3 months in February, March, April of next year, then you may be artificially just sprucing up your business, your property business, with very little income. Then what are you going to do?
Yeah. Now, okay. Going back to the properties, because that's what we are here to solve people's issues with. We touched on about let's say locations yesterday, Lakhi. Now, then we came across let's say Buytolet's investments. What about let's say development opportunities? Is it something worthwhile jumping into now for a lot of our buyers out there, or should they wait until let's say the market sort of becomes a bit clearer?
Now, what happens is, if you're quite an established developer, this is a bulle. That means it's a fantastic time for them to buy, because they've got deep pockets. and they can afford to have a 5-year, 10-year forecast of how they're going to work. Whereas if you're a startup or you've got a couple of sites, then you've got to be really careful, because a lot of lenders are going under. A lot of lenders aren't able to lend. A lot of their lenders are actually, the money's tied up in projects, they can't get it out because other bridging companies won't bridge them out. And if the sales market is a bit tight, especially on maybe larger projects or larger developments, then life could get very difficult. So I would say just be very careful. It's all about the numbers. The numbers are a bit scary, Halloween. But if you're not looking after your numbers and understanding them in terms of the implications and the pitfalls, then it could get quite scary.
No, you're right. I think a lot of our investors are very shrewd in their sort of investment opportunities that they're looking at. As I'm dealing with them on a regular basis, week on week, and everyone's got a separate sort of strategy in place in order what they're after. But you talk about, let's say, getting the sort of books in order, keeping a tight ship right now. So you're saying during this lockdown period, just assess their own business and not to do too much business. Is that what you're trying to say, or?
Just say that again, sorry.
So what you're suggesting to a lot of people out there is that during these lockdown measures, try to keep hold of, let's say, what you've got, as opposed to go out and spend and buy other investments.
And I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying look at your position quite carefully. If you've got quite deep pockets and you've got plenty of passa, you're cash rich, then it could be quite a good time to buy, because there are lots of people looking to exit and they can't find an exit. So you could go in and JV. So if you've got money, then it's going to be like a very rare commodity to have a fair amount of money lying around. So you could make a lot of money by helping people, but you just got to be careful. You got to pick your winners and your losers. So you got to be looking to work out a formula that works. But if you haven't got much and you are quite, how do you say, cash tight, or you've got a lot of assets and you've got very little money, or let's just say you're asset rich, cash poor, then you're going to be really careful about not taking on more than you can chew, because I think you've disappeared off the line, so I'll just continue. Let me see if I can get you back on. 1 second. So Nan's disappeared, unfortunately, but I think we are actually. Hold on 1 second.
Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
No, that's okay. So I think the question was, should you really be jumping into investments? And I'm just saying, don't jump into investments unless you've got a lot of if you've got deep pockets to actually ride out any problem. But if you're quite asset rich and cash poor and you don't have ability to raise funds easily, you're better to, as you've just said, to consolidate and tighten your position, tighten your belt. Make sure you don't take on new things if you can't really handle the ones that you already got, because you're going to be jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Okay,
but then I'll give an example of one of my investors that are looking to invest in this current market now. They've got a good connection with the banks, and rather than say put their own hard-earned cash into investment opportunities, they want to use the bank's money to invest in today's sort of market. Now, like you said, go for fixed rate opportunities, and that's exactly what they're trying to do. Get a 5-year fix if they can on their investment, and ideally buy in London. Is that something that, I mean, is wise, or?
Well, it all depends on the numbers. I think if they've got the ability to raise cash and start investing into London, and they've got good income coming in and a good portfolio, they're very lowly geared at, say, 10, 20, 30%. with very high yields, then yeah, I think it's a fantastic plan, because now's the time to get cash, start investing into property, because go back to the old terminology, a bird in the hand is worth 10 in the bush, in my opinion. Although normally people say a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. In this market, if you position yourself correctly in the right marketplace, you could be making really good money. You could be making millions from structuring yourself in a clever way. So you just need a good accountant, a good solicitor, good power team behind you to be chucking the fatte. Sorry, we seem to have lost Adnan there. But I think we are about to come to the end of the interview, because it's 25 minutes are up. So we shall catch up very soon with the next drive time tomorrow morning from 8 to 9 o'clock. Hope you all have a great Sunday, and happy Halloween from Lakhi Singh the Fixer and Adnan Pasha, who's driving into town now from Birmingham. So we'll catch up very soon. In fact, I've just got him back on to say goodbye. 1 second.
Hi guys, sorry, I'm just having really bad reception in where
So I
I'm
think
right
we've
now.
rounded off. So I'm just saying goodbye to everybody, because I think we've been there in about 25 minutes, which is normally our time. So goodbye from Lakhi Singh the Property Fixer, and goodbye
Thank you
from
very much, guys. Adnan from LPA Properties. Take care, guys. Have a good weekend as well. Say hello, Lucky. Thank you very much for being on here.
Take care, mate. Cheers.
Cheers, pal. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.